so, and so, yeah, it was sort of an accident. I didn't know that that's what I was doing when I started doing it. And then, like, the way my body shifted was so transformative and so powerful and so permanent, where other modalities kind of they lose their steam after a little while, they're hard to maintain. And this ended up being like a new way of being that was born from within and not so it just sort of felt entirely different and authentic in so far as like a true framework and a true foundation upon which all other healing can reside. I think I my healing was built a little bit on a house of cards before, and so now I feels like this is an approach that I think is available to everybody, and everybody should know about it.
So at what point did you recognize that nervous system restoration wasn't just part of your healing, it was actually the cornerstone?
Yeah, when I started to notice that all of these things shifted in my life that I had worked so hard on and I had forced an outcome, and I created a lot of force and a lot of effort and a lot of expectations and all of that stuff. And when I started to recognize that forcing wasn't actually good for me and that the forcing was actually causing me to experience a lot more illness. But what I recognize too in that regard, insofar as pulling back and allowing my body to just do what it was naturally supposed to do, then, like, let's say, for example, my diet was so rigid and so structured to maintain this perfect anti-inflammatory diet to keep my multiple sclerosis symptoms in check. And that worked and it was great. But I mean, I had a pretty rigid life and no question about it. But when I stopped paying attention to that and I just really was focused on this nervous system work, then all of a sudden it was like my nervous system could respond and breathe. And it was like, I moved from a place of contraction to expansion. And like having my diet so rigid is a contraction and it's a restriction and constriction. And to have that constriction in your nervous system creates like, constriction. And to shift in a different way to open your nervous system up to allow more expansion, then I was able to actually eat so much more food than I was ever ate before. And then that was actually kind of interesting because I realized, like, wow, was that all just a story I told myself around the food that I could or couldn't eat, or the food that was or wasn't nourishing for me, or the food that did or didn't drive my disease? But was that really ever true? Like, what if it was all my nervous system to begin with? And didn't have a connection with my nervous system. So food was the only way that I could modulate my nervous system response to my environment. But when I started to really work with expanding my nervous system specifically, then all of the food stories sort of resolved themselves all by themselves. So it was an interesting process for sure.
So nutrition was part of the process. You also involved a little bit of spiritual practice and a lot of self-inquiry in there. What did all these steps teach you about and kind of lead you to your understanding of the body's innate intelligence?